glowing screens everywhere, endless to-do lists, and just pressing your hands against your head in absolute frustration. Does that sound familiar? Well, if you are feeling completely overloaded, totally overwhelmed, and like you're constantly running on this chaotic, never-ending treadmill, let me tell you right now, you are definitely not alone.
Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a really fascinating framework from the book Overload, How to Unplug, Unwind, and Unleash Yourself from the Pressure of Stress. I'm genuinely super excited to unpack its core promise with you. We're going to go on a journey from severe anxiety to profound peace and outline a clear, actionable path to finally overcoming that crushing weight of modern life.
But before we can actually conquer the problem, we kind of need to take a step back and define our enemy. What exactly is stress?
What's really interesting here is how the text frames the whole issue. Stress isn't just, feeling a little bit busy. The author defines it as a deeply rooted biological reaction. It's your body's natural response to demands and perceived threats. Basically, it's this internal cycle of fears and anxieties that just loops continuously, and it ultimately leaves a really heavy, taxing burden on your physical, mental, and spiritual well-being.
And listen, this isn't just some detached academic observation. The author is actually drawing on intense personal battles with this nagging enemy. They're combining their background in ministry with a very real, lived-in perspective on what it actually takes to navigate these mental trenches.
So, how does this biological response actually infiltrate our day-to-day lives? The source uses a brilliant metaphor here that I just love. It says stress rarely barges through a back alley like a thief in the night. It doesn't hide in the shadows. Instead, it prefers to sneak right in through the front door of our lives, usually completely disguised as totally normal daily occurrences. And what are those front door intruders? Well, they're the rapid-fire agitations of everyday life. It's the hectic circumstances, the perpetually busy schedules, maybe poor choices catching up to us, bills piling up on the kitchen counter, an unreasonable boss demanding way too much of your time. Or, my personal favorite, that completely unexplainable and undeniably expensive funny noise your car just started making on the highway. It's this relentless, chaotic barrage that just quickly fills up our mental capacity. But hey, take a deep breath, because if you're feeling exasperated by all of that, you are really not alone. To help us navigate this universal feeling of exhaustion, the text introduces its ultimate mentor and case study for handling unimaginable stress. It points directly to the historical and biblical figure of Jesus, presenting him as someone who intimately understands the sheer, crushing weight of external pressure. The text maps out a timeline of these immense, quantifiable stressors he faced. Think about it. He was constantly managing and correcting his disciples. He was relentlessly attacked and discredited by religious leaders. Massive crowds followed him literally everywhere, begging for miracles. He faced the sting of utter rejection from his own hometown, and ultimately, he was betrayed by a chosen friend for 30 pieces of silver. I mean, that puts our daily modern stressors into quite a bit of perspective, doesn't it? And the source text grounds this perspective with a quote from Hebrews chapter 4, verse 15, emphasizing that Jesus intimately knows what it's like when life gets overwhelmingly heavy. He isn't positioned here as some unreachable, distant figure, but rather as someone who experienced the absolute full spectrum of human exhaustion and pressure. So, how do we find peace amidst the storm? Let's look at how this mentor actually handled life-threatening pressure. Picture this. The text recounts a story where Jesus and his disciples are out on a boat. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a furious squall comes up. We're talking massive, breaking waves, water pouring in, the boat is nearly swamped. The disciples are in an absolute, completely justifiable panic. But where is Jesus during all this? According to the text, he is in the stern of the boat, calmly sleeping on a cushion. So the frantic disciples wake him up, absolutely terrified that they are about to drown. And in this incredibly dramatic, memorable climax, Jesus simply gets up, rebukes the violent wind, and speaks directly to the waves. Quiet, be still. And instantly, the text says, the wind died down, and it was completely, perfectly calm. But the absolutely crucial point here is the question he poses next to the disciples: why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith? The source uses this to highlight a really profound contrast. Despite the very real, terrifying panic surrounding him, Jesus remained a peaceful, joyful, anchoring presence. You see, the storm was very real, but his internal peace completely overrode the external chaos.
All right, so how do we take that lesson and actually choose to overcome our own daily stressors? This leads us right to the text's practical application. The book lays out a fork in the road, two incredibly clear juxtaposed paths. On one side, we can just give in to the stress, but that guarantees anxiety, exhaustion, and a complete loss of joy. Or we can choose the alternative. Follow the spirit. This involves trusting God and literally casting your cares away, which allows you to maintain your joy. The most fascinating takeaway here is that the external stressors don't magically disappear, but our internal reaction entirely transforms. Let's look at how the author applies this to some highly relatable modern anxieties. What happens when you have a massive, life-altering decision ahead of you and the pressure is just building and building?
The author's reassuring answer is amazingly simple. Don't stress. God is in control. The book points back to ancient promises, like those found in Deuteronomy, affirming that you are never, ever left alone to face these burdens.
Okay, but what about when it's deeply personal? What if your marriage is struggling and the emotional weight just feels entirely unmanageable behind closed doors? Again, the source delivers that exact same mantra, don't stress, God is in control. It reinforces the book's core message that foundational trust is the ultimate antidote to relationship anxieties. And finally, what about those scary out-of-nowhere moments? You know, the phone rings and your doctor says they've ordered more tests. It's literally the ultimate trigger for spiraling anxiety. Even then, the framework holds firm. The author reiterates that there is no debt, no medical trial, and no obstacle too big to be cast away using this specific spiritual framework. You are invited, right now, to stop carrying the weight. And that brings us to our empowering final thought. The source material is adamant. You do not have to live an overloaded, exhausted life. You are invited to pursue a joy-filled, abundant path simply by changing your response to the storm. So it leaves us with a pretty powerful question to reflect on today. Will you continue letting those frantic front door intruders run your life, or are you ready to finally quiet the waves and reclaim your peace?